Dr. Pravaznik and I both found one of the things early on when we were talking about business together, one of the things we both agreed was that occasionally you need to fire an employee loudly and publicly. That, and it, my philosophy on that has grown a little bit over time, over all the careers I've had, including being a pastor. One of the things I used to say that today probably wouldn't be taken as well, but what I used to say is I was a very avid hunter. I hunted a lot of birds, especially. So I was a big bird hunter. And yeah, there were times where I used to tell people that how good a pastor I was on Sunday depended upon how many things I killed on Saturday. There's something to be said for that. And I think Bill talked about, it's like a chicken. Once in a while, you got to kill one in front of all the others as a message to all of them, which of course we wouldn't actually do. That's a metaphor. Don't get crazy here. Okay, but the basic idea is that I work incredibly hard to have a good relationship with my employees. There are lots of reasons for that. And that's what I want, is I want a relationship. I want my employees to have buy-in to what we're doing because they're very important to me. And it goes beyond just it feels good and those sorts of things. Employees who want to work with you are dramatically less expensive than ones that don't. People often think they go to a job for a paycheck, but they don't. They use a paycheck to fill their life with the things that they need to meet needs, and a paycheck is a piece of that, but it's not the only piece. And a job takes up a third or more of their entire life, and if they're unhappy there, they become really expensive. If you're going to keep them and they're unhappy, they're going to be expensive. So you want to have this good relationship with them, and I care about my employees a lot, and I take very good care of them. I think if you were to meet 95% of my employees, they're going to tell you that my companies are the best they've ever worked for. But it's 95%. Why? Because some employees suck. That's just all there is to it. And when I went into business ownership after having been a pastor, it was one of the things I struggled with. One of the things I had to learn was, as a pastor's heart says, I care about everybody. I can make good with everybody. And what I found is that might be true, but it isn't true for me because I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to turn every person into a valuable employee. Some of them can't do it because of skills that I get them at 20 or 25 or 30 years old or whatever, and I can't go back and teach them to read and write and have values and get along with others, and I don't, that's impossible to do. Some of them won't do it because something in their personality won't allow them. I don't want to say that they're bad people, but at least in the work environment, they're bad. And so every one of us who has employees has some absolutes about it. One of the absolutes is, in 99% of the time, the absolute is you have to make us money. I say 99% of the time because it's not 100% of the time, because sometimes we build a business and make space for people who don't make us money because we want them there for some other reason. They're there because they make us happy. They're there because we want to help them. There's whatever it is. But so there's not absolutes. There aren't absolutes. What do you do with the employee who won't play ball? I've already said I'm not opposed to yelling at people. If you know me very long, you know that. But I am opposed to yelling at my employees. I would say by far the largest percentage of my employees have never heard me yell at an employee. I don't do it because it doesn't work. It's not effective. It does not make them better. It can make them better in a very limited short-term way. It does not make them better employees in the long run. But there have to be some boundaries that all happens within. So I tell my employees, it's one of the things that you'll hear from me. If you were to work for me, you would hear multiple things. You would hear, I expect you to make mistakes. Okay? Why do I say that? Well, because in because I don't make bombs. I don't do brain surgery. I don't do any of the things that need the absolutes. There are places that are no mistake environments. Those are not any of my businesses. My businesses make money around things like quality and speed and these sorts of things. But where those juxtapose to each other as they meet, there comes a point where if you're doing too good of quality, you're going too slow. If you never make a mistake, the only way to do that is to do that really slow. We race cars. It's called autocross. Autocross is racing cars in an open space like a parking lot around cones. And it's a new course every day, and it's the car that can get around the cones, around the course, fastest wins. And I hear people talk about drivers who never hit cones. We had a guy who I think he went over a year without ever hitting a cone, and people kept saying how amazing it was. So-and-so, he never hits a cone. And I said, look at his times. There is a way to hit no cones. The way you do it is you go really slow. That's just all there is to it. It's the only way. National champions hit cones. They hit lots of cones. Why? Because the margins of error are tiny. The way to be fast is to push the edges all of the time. One of the things I'm very proud to say in our club, that for a long time, it's not universal, but especially with us, the guys who drive mod cars, which I did for a while, is very often the people in our club who hit the most cones are the mod car drivers, and the mod car driver who hits the most cones usually they give the Cone Killer Award, and almost every time the Cone Killer also is a champion that year. Because what it says is I won the Cone Killer. I won the Cone Killer a year that I won the championship, which says you can call me a Cone Killer. I don't care. I'm still faster than you. It's the justification. When you drive a mod car that's hard to drive, it's this raw aggression thing, and you win by pushing the edges constantly, and which means you get it right sometimes you don't. So they're going to hear, I expect you to make mistakes. That's one of the basic things. One of the other ones I tell them is there are two reasons people in my companies get fired, let go. One gets let go and one gets fired. You get let go if I can't make money with you, okay? Usually, if I can't find a way where you're making me money, I can't keep you. That was... I probably, one of my companies, I'm pretty sure I lost because I couldn't do that. Because I hadn't gotten to the point where I could push people out the door fast enough, and I let it do us in. I let it cost us so much time because I was still being a pastor rather than a boss. So that one's hard, and I've had people, I just can't figure out how to make money with them. I can't teach them enough. I let them down. I can't get to that point. The other thing that will definitely get you fired in my company is disrespecting me. What does that look like? Usually it looks like this. I tell you, this is one of the things every employee is going to hear. I want my employees to disagree with me. I want them to... Very often the employees are more expert in their individual tasks than I am. The more high-tech your company, the more likely your employees know things you don't know anything about. I value them, and I want them telling me better ways of doing things, and I want them pushing back on my decisions and those sorts of things. That's great, and I reward it big time. But there are times where I'm going to think one thing and an employee is going to think another thing, and I tell them straight out, if we get to the point where you can't convince me and we're back and forth and we can't come to an agreement, so long as I'm signing the paychecks, I win. That's how the life works. That if it comes down to that point where we can't decide, then we're going to do it my way. Because I'm going to leave you the option, and this is an at-will work state. In the state of Washington, you can pick up and leave and go do it your way. You're allowed to do that. But so long as I'm taking all the risk, if we can't agree, we're going to do it my way. If an employee can't get that through their head and decides to put up a fight at that point, I find that terribly disrespectful. When an employee can't respect I always have the company's best interest at heart. I have no other choice. I can't survive without the company's best interest at heart. If I say something's going to be done a certain way, I want disagreement, but not nothing but disagreement. Get an employee who is suspect of everything. I can't help but see employees as I say these things. They pop into my head, and employees that are just push back, push back, push back, push back. And a piece of it is as companies exist for a time. The one that's in my head right now, she was a situation where she came into the company after time. We were already good at stuff, so we'd be telling her how to do something, and she'd say no, and she'd push back, and it's like, listen, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel every time. I'm not going to explain everything to you. If you're in management, as you move up the company, I care more and more that you understand why everything. At an entry-level position, before you've proven yourself as being valuable, there's just do it this way. There are times I don't have time. In a company that was growing rapidly, company was growing very, very fast, and we're having trouble keeping up with everything. It's like, listen, no, I don't have time for this discussion. Just do it the way I said. Is it the best way? No, I'll acknowledge it might not be the best way, but it makes money. This way works, and it makes money, and it doesn't screw up products that come back to me. Just do it this way, and this employee just push back. And at one point, this employee just refused to do what I said, and yeah, that was the time where you have this relieving moment where you go, get your shit and get the fuck out of my business. And it's very relieving, because what led up to that is, if you're this is one of those things as a boss where you go, the reason I'm not an employee is because an employee has nothing to do at that moment. An employee's just is stuck at that moment, and that's what it grinds on you, because you're stuck there. And as an owner, I'm not. As an owner, I can say, get your shit and get out. And Bill and I agreed that one of the great things about a moment like that, what I talk about, is you need to fire somebody once in a while. Why? Because the rest of employees who are your friends and who are working along with you and everything, there's something to be said for, it's not even that I want them afraid of me. I don't want them afraid of me. What I want them to know is that I expect good, and if the person next to them is a piece of crap in what they do all the time, they need to know that that's not rewarded. They need to know that, because otherwise, another story. In the Army, it was a giant problem. I saw this as a giant failing in the way the Army did things. The Army decided to do group punishment for stuff. When I was at basic training, the story I tell my students when telling this stuff, I tell my students, basic training, we had a day. There was a soldier in my company, a different platoon than mine, the Army wasn't the right place for him. He was out of place, so he was not thriving in that environment. He was too weak of will for the environment, and so he was soft. The Army is a place where we exist to kill people and break things. Your life is on the line. You have to trust the person next to you, and I don't mean just in combat, because we're constantly training with pieces of equipment that will kill you, and OSHA doesn't apply. It's a dangerous environment, and so it works under a different set of rules, and this guy wasn't going to make it. He just wasn't. But that doesn't mean we have to be cruel. The other thing is the Army, we want to say it's filled with the best and the brightest, but that's not all the case. It's filled with the people who join the Army, which is everybody. And so the basic training soldiers at 17, 18 years old tend to be a very immature group. And I was 28 years old. We're at basic training. We're in formation. It's early morning. I think it's a Saturday. Yeah, for sure it was a Saturday. And so we'd fallen out into formation, but there were only one or two drill sergeants around. So put 130 17 and 18-year-olds in a building and not very much supervision, and what do you think happens? So all of us are standing outside in formation, and they were picking on this guy. My platoon fell out into our position, and everybody there is making fun of this guy, and they're calling him names and tearing him apart. And And the thing was, is it was cruel. It was cruel, and it was unbecoming of a military soldier. It was unbecoming of people I wanted to serve with. And I outranked all of the soldiers in my platoon. And so under one of the very rare times I used my rank in basic training, I told my platoon, we're not, everybody shut up. You're not participating in that. You are not saying anything. And we made it obvious enough, because what I was trying to do is put peer pressure on the other platoons to shut up and leave him alone. And this guy was the sort of guy, you know, these guys who are kind of wimpy but pick constantly, they beg to be picked on. It wasn't like I felt like some sort of hero thing. This guy, I didn't want to protect this guy, because this guy begged to be just ragged on all the time. He was a jerk. He got people in trouble. It was constant. And so it had nothing to do with liking him. It had everything to do with this was unbecoming of soldiers, and we shouldn't be doing it. And my guys were going to shut the hell up, because that was the most power I had, was to go that far. So my 30 guys were going to just not participate in it. Somehow they got caught doing it. I don't know if the drill sergeants were overhearing what was going on, something, but somehow they got caught doing it. And the drill sergeants also agreed it was unbecoming of a group of soldiers. And so they decided we would get punished. And it was one of these things, had multiple layers to it. Sunday, we were left with one drill sergeant, and that drill sergeant was a sadist. I'm telling you, that's the problem with drill sergeants, there are drill sergeants who are there because the Army picks them, and because the Army needs good soldiers, so they put good soldiers there and force them to train us, which is good. But there are soldiers who end up as drill sergeants because they are megalomaniacs, and it's like handing them piles of victims, and that's who we had as our drill sergeant that day. And so that Sunday, they rolled us as bad as we ever got rolled. And out in the dry grass, it was hot, it was dry, and they rolled us all damn day. And to the point where the worst part of it was the grass. We're in Louisville, Kentucky, and they have a bug called chiggers. We don't have them in the Northwest, thank God. Sorry for those of you who do. But they're these stupid little red bugs that crawl in and go underneath your skin. And they're terrible, and you can't do anything about it. And they get covered with these welts. You get a welt every place there's one. And I was blessed. God blessed me with something about my body chemistry. They hate me. They wouldn't touch me. I never got one. Other guys were the opposite of that. And we had a couple of guys who had thousands of them, literally, like threatened their military career. They were so sick of them. All that. The problem is, as I said, we got rolled. My company did not, or my platoon did not participate, and we got flogged the same as everybody else. And absolutely what they taught my platoon of 17 and 18-year-olds is we should have given that guy shit. If we're gonna get the punishment, we might as well do the crime. And that's absolutely what that group learned. They taught them the opposite of what they wanted to teach them, because the Army does some stuff in big stupid ways. And so one of the things you have is the opposite in a company is you need to know if the person next to you is cheating constantly, you want them to get caught. Otherwise it encourages you to do the same stuff. Okay, so that's this idea that yes, you need to fire somebody once in a while. It needs to be seen, both for the negative effect. Some people need to see the fear that yes, I can get fired here. This place might be a lot of fun and games, and we do lots of fun stuff, but you can also get fired here. And you need the people on the other side who are going, thank God, people actually, I shouldn't be the one doing all the work here, so it needs to happen. And what we found is that a firing like that should happen in a way everyone knows it happened. And I don't mean go scuttlebutt through the whole thing. Bill and I both agreed that firing should happen loudly enough that everyone in the company knows immediately. That firing I'm talking about happened in a company that had 2 spaces with a wall between them. We were in 2 separate spaces in a building, and in one of the 2 spaces we ran table saws and sanders and power tools. It shut the whole company down to hear her get fired. I mean, instantly, I was busy firing her, but I hear everyone knew it was happening right then as it happened, and there was a whole lot of, oh shit. It's going down. And that's the thing. Yes, there's a time for that. There's a time for saying no. It's like parents who say you better watch it. I'm counting to 10, but there's never a penalty. If there's never a penalty, pretty soon even a small child will figure out that it doesn't mean anything. And yes, in a company, I think once in a while there has to be consequences, and the at will work thing, it can be very beneficial to the employer too, because no, I don't have to give you 2 weeks. No, you have no rights in my building. Matter of fact, that employee called the cops. I said, please do call the cops. And the cops showed up and hauled her out because that's what happens. I run the building. I have the right to throw anybody out of it I want to. And the cops just said, do you have anything here, ma'am, that belongs to you? My coat. Okay. Is there anything else? No. Okay, then you're leaving now. And oh, by the way, you're leaving the property. Get off the property and don't return. If you return, we'll arrest you. She was shocked. Amazing how those things happen. But that's it. You got to understand. So yes, I believe once in a while, the smaller the company, the less likely. But I certainly think by the time you get to 8 to 10 employees, an employee, I don't go looking for it, but I take advantage of it when an employee volunteers to get a serious ass chewing in public, and I'm telling you, in my entire career, I've done this. I've only ever fired 2 people like that. Okay, so I'm telling you, it doesn't happen that often. I have yelled at an employee maybe once every 2 years of business ownership. So it doesn't have to happen very much. I think a bigger company, it might need to happen a little more often. The more people you have, the more turnover you have. But no, there's something to be said. It's a little bit of a tactic. And if I'm yelling at an employee like that, I'm actually pissed off. It's funny, I have a loud voice, so people are like, why are you so mad? Most of the time people say that, I'm like, I'm not mad at all. I might be aggressive, I might be forward, all my employees who've heard me yell at an employee will tell you, it's funny because somebody will say, why are you so mad? And they'll all go, he's not mad. You'll know when he's mad. My students would do the same thing. They tell my students. Any of them who'd seen me mad were like, oh no, we know what mad looks like and this isn't it.